Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining the live event. Today, I'm Dr. Maria Sampalis. I have Shane Sheperd with us today from VisionWeb. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sampalis. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's going to be a great webinar or a live event today because a lot of doctors ask questions on billing and things like that. So it was great to have an expert on the show to be able to answer our questions. So any of you that have questions, feel free to comment. I will be asking them live to Shane, and that way you have an answer right away. If not, you can email him, and he's happy to get back to you as well. For those of you that do not know Shane, he is currently the Director of Revenue Cycle Management Sales at VisionWeb. He has over 20 years experience in various healthcare and insurance roles. And having worked for an insurance company and as a manager for the eye care practice in the past, he carries a unique perspective and vast knowledge on the ins and outs of medical insurance and vision plans. So I want to thank you so much for joining us today, Shane.
Thank you. Thank you for the nice introduction. I appreciate it. It's nice to be with you. I'm a bit of an insurance nerd. So, talking about anybody who I can kind of rope into talking about insurance, I'm happy to spend some time with. That's not every person finds that interesting. So, optometrists generally do, and the staff, because it's your livelihood. But yeah, I'm honored to be with you today. So I appreciate
So
it.
how did you become like a geek of insurance, and how did you get ended up with VisionWeb?
Yeah. Well, I had worked at a health insurance company out of college, and I did that for 5 or 6 years. So I was on that side of the equation, and so I kind of learned how those processes worked from the other vantage point. And I got sideways with the management at the insurance company, and I told my wife. I came home angry one day, and I told her, I said, I'm taking the next job I find, whatever that is. I'll get a job and then I'll find my career. And so 3 days later, I was doing billing in an optometry office. And at the time, I didn't know the difference between an optometrist and an ophthalmologist. I was just ignorant. I knew codes and processes, but I didn't know uh, anything about optometry. And so I took a job at a place, give them a shout out. It was McCormick Vision Center here in Austin, Texas, and John and Mike McCormick. And so I ended up doing their billing. And, I realized pretty early on that there was this profound lack of knowledge about medical billing and optometrists in optometry, performing medical services all the time, but not necessarily getting paid for them. A lot of times doing them because they want to do them and not even making it onto the invoice. So yeah, realized that there was a lack of knowledge and opportunity there, and so uh, ended up managing a practice for 11 years while I built a revenue cycle management business, and today that is VisionWeb's business. I planted the little seed that I founded the little business that VisionWeb acquired about 7 years ago, and me along with it. And so now it's much, much bigger than me. We have a wonderful staff. Our director is Brittany Harrison, director of RCM operations, and she's put together a team of really, really educated and I'm proud to be associated with that group. They represent us well. So, yeah, that's our little story and how the business came to be and our kind of our place there.
For our audience that doesn't know much about VisionWeb, what can you give us like a summary for the listeners?
I appreciate that question because Vision Web is a bit of an enigma to a lot of people. When we go to trade shows and such, they've heard of Vision Web, but they're not quite sure what we do, to be honest with you. So a lot of brand awareness, but not so. The details are lost on some people. So we have three products. We have a product ordering module that connects the laboratories, specs, the PM systems to the laboratories. And so you can submit your spec orders without having to enter in the data, and data is not transposed, and it's the right price. The labs pay for it because it reduces their cost of doing business, so it's free to the optometrist. And so that is one product. We have a PM EHR called Uprise, And then what I do for a living, which is revenue cycle management, and which, RCM is what the buzzword you hear out there. But revenue cycle management is kind of, fancy talk for claims management as far as this conversation is concerned. And, we do optometric billing for roughly 750 ODs across the nation now, and only optometric billing. We're not trying to be anything to anybody else. That's that's, I would say, one of our strengths, is that we're focused on optometric billing. And so we're very familiar with all the things that are in our space that cause other billing companies issues, because they're just not familiar with this vertical. So that's what VisionWeb is.
Great. For a lot of people joining are really interested in medical billing. What are some, what causes some, stress and apprehension with, some doctors with medical billing? I mean, because I hear it often, but I mean, I'm sure you hear it even more. I mean, you guys are so laser focused in optometry. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of, what do they call it? Analysis paralysis. A lot of fear in the kind of the industry. Fear of losing patients, fear of audits, fear of the unknown. And so, all of that kind of combined, and people have the skill set. You went to school and have the ability to render the services, but all these kind of factors come together to prevent people from really, maximizing their education and raising the level of care and the encounters. And so that's one of the things that we do for people is, yes, we handle the processes and try to help people with those, but we also try to take some of the, inform people and give them as much information as they want. We're not pushing information on them, but when they want it, we do our best to kind of provide what we can and take that, help alleviate some of that fear.
Yeah, I mean, one thing is, a lot of doctors are afraid of an audit. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? Because they feel like if they go and do the medical model, they're more likely to get audited, things like that. But they're just practicing their standard care and what, chief complaint was. Am I correct?
Absolutely. And I have the benefit of having worked on the other side of this, where, they're actually selecting people to do their audits on. And, I was in policy administration. So that's everything from the mailroom to, paying claims and underwriting. But I was, I knew the actuaries, and, we'd have conversations. And so, what I would say about that, Maria, is that a lot of people, if you were following your education and you're doing the things that that are right from a medical perspective, medical necessity, people like me don't determine medical necessity, the doctor does. And so, follow your education and document, don't be sloppy with what you're documenting. And then even if you do get audited, I won't throw a percent out, but a vast majority of time that would be routine in nature, just triggered by, you just luck of the draw, like having to go on jury duty almost, it's you're going to get an audit sometime. But even let's say you did something wrong, it's not malicious in nature, and so what is likely going to happen if you do get audited is the insurance company is going to say, hey, you forgot to dot this I and cross that T. Dot that I and cross that T. We're going to come look in another 6 months. And if you did that, then all's well with the world, And if you didn't clean up your mess, as they would say, then yeah, you might have a problem. But if you're not out to defraud anybody, and this is just you made a procedural error because you didn't know to document something in a certain way, then you correct it and you go on. And life is all right,
Yeah. When I started medical billing in my practice, I kind of learned and just, read different things in the industry. And you learn real quick when you get those first denials, or you get something that, Medicare or Blue Cross, doesn't want you doing, or whatever the case is. But there's just so many resources out there. And I think there is some apprehension from doctors in the industry to go medical because of the unknowns or or
Yeah.
all these other little things that they hear. But yeah, we're practicing like we were taught in school. We should be billing for our services. If it's a routine eye exam, it's a routine eye exam. If it's cataracts, if it's medical, we should be billing for the highest specificity.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, another one of the things that people have fear about is that they're going to cause the patient to have some unexpected financial liability, and that's going to affect patient retention, right? And so, they're a little apprehensive about maybe doing perform the level of care that they know and that they want to and should. They're afraid that the patient's going to object for financial reasons. And that insurance and billing doesn't dictate what you do, of course, the medical necessity, and that's what the doctor is going to do, right? But we'd be naive to say that not considering what the financial ramifications are on a patient, it would affect their decision making in the future. And so you want to give them a clear explanation of what their financial liability is going to be for whatever you determine is needed. And benefits are, pulling benefits accurately and efficiently are key in that, in my estimation. My opinion is that that's a key aspect of this, and a little time and effort spent up front will leave the patient with a clear understanding of that. And so, yeah, pulling benefits is key, and not, following your education is also a big aspect of it. So those two things are things that the optometrist can control and will help the practice move forward, really.
I appreciate that insight. Do you have any other strategies of overcoming that fear of billing and things like that? Because it seems like it's a big uphaul sometimes for a lot of practices, and some doctors don't feel at this point they have the bandwidth.
Yeah, well, let me go back to the benefits, because that's the single biggest thing that you can do is pull the benefits and understand the benefits. So a lot of times people think that because there is a deductible, it applies. They'll use a service that automates pulling the benefits, or the staff member will go out to the clearinghouse and pull the benefits, and they'll see the policy's active, that it's no pre-existing conditions, and that there's a $3,000 deductible, and none of it's met, and that's where they stop. And so that's not necessarily the case. There may be a preventative eye exam that's available on a comprehensive eye exam that's available on the health insurance and is redundant to the managed vision care, that'll reimburse 2.5x to what the managed vision care is. And preventative services aren't going to be 99% of the time aren't subject to deductible. They're preventative services. Think of any other preventative service you go and have. Do those hit the deductible? No, very, very rarely does a preventative service hit the deductible. So that's one aspect of it. And then understanding that when diagnostic testing, a lot of time is not subject to, not every time. Now, sometimes it is, but diagnostic testing, and that would be any test in your office that starts with the number 9, that's going to fall under the CPT code. That's going to fall under diagnostic medical. And a lot of times that's not subject to deductible, whereas office surgery, foreign body removals, punctal plugs, things that start with the procedure code 6, those may be subject to deductible. So it's one thing, I digress. It's one thing to pull the benefits, and it's another to understand them, right? And so that takes a little time, but if you will invest a couple of weeks up front to understanding that insurance jargon, that's going to help you overcome that lack of knowledge and lack of a fear of the unknown. And then you'll be able to have the right conversations with the patients, and you won't worry about the retention, So being credentialed, pulling benefits, and following your education, those are all things that if you just kind of will hone in on, will help the practice move forward.
Now, you pointed on doctors, kind of educating themselves. Are there certain resources you recommend? Does VisionWeb have some resources that doctors can download and things like that?
Yeah, our RCM clients, as I mentioned before, that's part of the gig, as much as people want it. We're helping. Some people don't. They just want you to take their billing, what they're doing, and do your best to get that through the machine, through the insurance and machine. And we're happy to do that. But for a lot of people, they want to know what the LCDs and NCDs are, what diagnosis codes drive what procedures in the insurance company's minds. How do you bill for cataract post-ops? They want information about, how you go about some of these things. And that's part of our job. And so we have resources that we share with our clients. And so that's one place you can go. As far as just out there and we're happy to build that relationship with your viewers. So, to a certain extent, they can reach out to us, and if they have questions, I'm happy to answer them. You can go to CMS's website and get the NCDs and LCDs. And for those that may not familiar with them, that's National Coverage Determination and Local Coverage Determination. And that's not information that is you have to pay for. If you get out there and go to CMS's website, you'll see how frequently a test can be run, what diagnosis codes drive it, the severity of it dictating, all the particulars about a procedure code as CMS, kind of dictates. So you can get out there and look at that as well.
Yeah, I think that's important because a lot of doctors don't know which, codes to use or how often they can run a visual field or things like that. And a lot of them are getting denials from post-ops, from Medicare, and those are kind of big ticket items. So I think that's important just to know, but to understand that even if you're going to outsource your billing too. So to have an opportunity to know where to go next, to say, okay, we did a field and we did a retinal photography. We can't do OCT today because that's considered an image. And they need to come back, whatever your thing is, your recommendations. So those are all important little things too.
For sure. And having good control and transparency in the results of what you've done as far as from the insurance company, that'll teach you a lot. If you're in tune with your business and you have a lot of transparency in the results of, of the denials, the rejections and denials, then that's going to teach you. You care about your business, you're going to learn. So yeah, just being in tune and having the transparency, that's a problem for people though, is having that transparency, getting that information in a digestible form so that they can look and see, oh, okay, so these codes don't, one bumps up against the other, they don't work together, or, there's any number of things, so having someone who is sharing that information with you in a way that you can, act on it is big.
Now, one of the other questions, a lot of doctors have a lot of questions on modifiers. Can you give us some information on modifiers? When are they appropriate? How do we use them? That's a big question all the time. It's still confusing to me.
Yeah, well, I saw on that someone in your group had posted that question. So to whoever that was out there, thank you. And so they gave me a little heads up. So I did go and let me see if I can share my screen here, Maria. Share screen. I took about year to date, I took our claims that we process for RCM clients, and I built a little pivot table for everyone so that they could see how often they reject, deny, which ones are used by optometrists, all of that fun, nerdy stuff, right?
Awesome. So, here we go. It's up. We got it to work. Okay, good.
Okay, awesome. Very good. So, so I just took all of our claims. So, and this is by line. And if you look there, you'll see the total way down at the bottom, 678,000 lines. So pretty big sample size, right? 84% of the claims had no modifiers. The procedures had no modifiers on them, and had a denial rate of 16%. That's on a line item basis. So you'll hear people talk about, a 2% denial rate, a 3% denial rate. That's on a claim level. They're kidding themselves if they think that's on a line level. So anyway, Looking at the modifiers, you'll see there's LT and RT, which is maybe a bit surprising to people because laterality got moved into the diagnosis codes when ICD-10, right? Reduced services 52. I found this a bit interesting. Look at the denial rate when you reduce the amount of payment. Somehow those miraculously don't get denied. They have a 2% denial rate compared to the other claims, So if you're just willing to take less, Dr. Sampalis, they'll pay your claim. But so some of the modifiers that are in our space that are used a lot. You have 55 that are cataract post-ops. 51, you'll see that on puntal plugs. So multiple procedures at the same session. But I think where some of the questions are probably coming from are related to modifiers 25 and 59. And that's why I went ahead and highlighted those. So if you have two evaluation and management codes that are on the same day and they're bumping up against each other, that would be modifier 25. Okay. So, how often is that going to happen? You'd have to tell me, Maria. But, if you had someone came in for an office visit in the morning and an office visit in the evening, maybe they came in for conjunctivitis in the morning and a scratched cornea in the afternoon. If you had multiple office visits, E&M codes could be maybe a 92004 and a 99 code later on. Then 25 would be the way to show that those were not related to each other and not redundant and duplicates. 59 modifier is a distinct procedural service. And so a lot of times people, if they have two tests that are part of the CCI edits, so those that aren't familiar with it, this correct coding initiative are the rules that state that, this procedure and that procedure can't be performed on the same day for the same diagnosis, for example. And in our space, that would be OCTs and fundus photography. Right. But if they were run on the same day for a different reason, then a modifier would show that those procedures were separate and distinct. So that's the difference between a 55 and a 59. 25s are based on evaluation and management codes. 59s are to show procedures. So
can you explain when somebody would use a 59 procedure? Are you saying like maybe visual field glaucoma, OCT, macula? I mean, I'm just trying to.
Yeah. So I don't want to. I hang out with a lot of doctors, but I'm not one, so I got to do some careful stepping here.
Sure.
But so like if you had on the fundus photography and OCT, my understanding is if the fundus photography was for retinal degeneration, and then the OCT was performed for a completely different reason, maybe as macular degeneration, and it had to be run, then those could be billable on the same day with different diagnosis codes and a modifier showing that they're separate. Yeah. So that's the.
Yeah. All right. So that's how they would bill that if it was different procedure codes to be able to do that. Okay. Yeah. Sure. So I think that's important because sometimes I might have thought that, I'm going to take a photo, we're checking AMD and, but they're also a glaucoma patient and it's been there 6 months. I can't do an OCT because we're doing photos that day. But yeah, I mean, I would use that modifier there to, help that because a lot of patients now don't want to come back and forth. And for even time and efficiency in our practice to kind of maximize our time and our billing, I like to kind of do as many procedures that I'm allowed to in one day and kind of move on. And I see a lot of older people, they don't want to keep coming back either. And then now with gas too, I mean, it's starting to take effect. So I think that's important too for doctors to understand.
Absolutely. And each doctor to each his own. Some people want to bring them back. Other people, bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. And so they may not come back, and they're there right then. They have the capacity right then. Let me go do it. And the guy that I worked for, he was going to do everything that he wanted and needed to do to take care of the patient. And then he just wouldn't bill for stuff. He would just, eat it. And if he didn't think, but having the information, we were able, for example, how that business got started is we were able to increase his revenue, and he wasn't doing anything different. We just identified the situations where he was able to get paid for the things that he was doing. So
well, tell us a little bit about that. Give us some insight here on how to increase revenue with medical billing or insurance stuff. What are, how can we, just take a little bit of money back now with inflation and everything that's going on? Give us a little bit of tricks here.
Well, let me pull a couple of my favorites out of the recesses of my mind. So a lot of times, a mistake. First, I told you about pulling benefits.
Yeah.
And understanding where there's routine on the health insurance, where there's a comprehensive eye exam on the health insurance. That's a big one. Okay. There are some plans that will pay for diagnostic testing as part of the preventative service as a baseline. So that's kind of rare though. One of the things that I see optometrists doing that, and they're putting forth the effort. They're trying to get paid, but they run their aging. They see a bunch of stuff not paid, and they go out and just resubmit everything en masse. And then, but what happens is the claim was, it's just going to deny as a duplicate, and it increases all the paperwork coming through. So really having your biller understand the difference between rejections and denials is key, because it affects how you submit the claims. And that's something that happens over and over and over again. And anybody who's listened to me in my little lectures and webinars and such, they've probably heard me say this, because it is something that's reoccurring, and that is the difference between a rejection and a denial. Rejection is a claim that never got processed. So when you fix that claim, so let's say the date of birth was wrong. When you submit that claim, it's a new claim to the insurance company. They never got the first one. Mm-hmm. So whenever you correct whatever's wrong, you can just submit it the way it is, and it'll go through. A denial is a claim that, maybe you hit the wrong button and you linked a retinal diagnosis to a corneal topography. Then that's going to deny, and that claim has to be submitted as a corrected claim. So that's a big thing, is understanding how to resubmit the claims that have denied. So pulling those benefits and understanding the rejections, denials, making sure they get submitted and addressed, so you can avoid the timely filings. Those are the kind of the ones that kind of are a punch in the gut when you see somebody, see claims that are denied for timely filing, because either someone just wasn't working their claims, or they didn't understand this rejection denial thing. And so they're working really hard, resubmitting rejections or denials, and they're just getting denied as duplicates,
Yeah. And, I think as me as an optometrist, me transferring over to the medical model was super great way to get, increased revenue. A lot of doctors are complaining vision plans and things like that. If we're just billing routine to vision plans instead of, let's say, Blue Cross, which might reimburse for a routine exam, there are different levels of reimbursement. And I think that's super important, especially as, inflation and things like that. So for me in my practice, medical exam is almost like $250, $300 per patient transaction. That's just also doing fields and things like that. But even so, it's additional revenue, huge, that a lot of doctors should be taking advantage of. And yeah, I was nervous at first to do it. I was same, apprehensions a lot of doctors had, getting credentialed, finding staff, getting denials, thinking about audits or things like that. But you're just practicing the highest level of care, and you're kind of going back and forth with, what they're there for. And it's by chief complaint. So you can kind of differentiate routine versus medical. And it's nice to have that to do your time, and because you're also explaining things to patients that take some time too, in your highest level expertise. So I think that's super important too, as doctors start to convert to the medical model of optometry. It's so important for our future. And even if they're apprehensive, there's resources out there like VisionWeb, and also, to help you bill and do things like that for your practice if that's something you can't do in-house.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And when someone comes in and Dr. Sampalis, you correct me here if I'm wrong, okay? Someone comes in and they have blurry vision. There could be it could be refractive or it could be medical at that point. You don't know what the cause of their blurry vision is going to be. And so truth be known, they don't know because they think they know, they assume they know, but there's a certain percentage where they're incorrect. I mean, someone could have corneal edema and that be the cause of their blurry vision, and then not really realize it. So the staff can do when they're taking the chief complaint, make sure that they aren't pigeonholing the doctor, and if the person is there for blurry vision, then document it's blurry vision. Let the doctor decide what the reason is.
Yeah, sometimes a lot of blurry vision can just be glasses, and that's routine. And sometimes it's cataracts or whatever else, and it's justified for you to bill the Blue Cross and have have the patient understand why you're billing one thing versus another, and just have a policy and make sure your staff is on board and they're educated on it, because I think that's important. I mean, you're doing the next step care. It takes a little more medical decision making and things like that, and we should be compensated for our time and our expertise.
Absolutely. It's funny the things that you run into at the practice. I have someone who just minor problem, and it's like the end of the world, right? And then I remember working a patient up, and they were there for, it was the first patient after lunch. They were there for what they had said was a routine eye exam, but their eye was kind of like swollen shut. Their lid was all down, and so then I went to go do retinal photos, and I was like, well, I'm gonna have to try to, and so I pulled their lid back, and their eye was just coagulated blood. It was just completely bloodshot, and I was like, I think does this hurt? Are you here for an eye exam? Have I got the right person here?
And not routine, yeah.
Yeah, but they were like, yeah, well, it's been that way for a while. Like, well, let's time out here. And I think what ended up happening was the intraocular lens had slipped out and cut the person, and it coagulated. I think, I don't know.
Yeah, wow.
I heard it getting secondhand, but anyway, yeah. But
it's things like that. Doctors just
anyway,
need to differentiate routine versus medical, and just take the opportunities. There's so many resources out there. There's so many things in optometry that can help. So anyone that's thinking about medical, feel free to contact Shane. He said email here, or go to the VisionWeb website, and you can get some more information on all the other services and things that they provide as well. And I want to thank VisionWeb for sponsoring this podcast today, and Shane for coming on. I appreciate it, and I think the listeners of this podcast probably get some good information, because billing and insurance and all this other stuff is I don't know, it's just super complicated for us. Unless they just make it super complicated, I don't know. I mean, you kind of made it super simple today. I mean, it made me feel kind of like.
Well, thank you. That's your job. Yeah, that's what our job is. Take something that's complicated and try to make it simple, and take the burden. We have two values. We try to bring two values to the practice: reduce burden to the practice and increase their revenue through proper throughput. And if we can take the people have labor constraints these days. It's hard to get people that are invested, and it's just a tough labor market for optometrists. And so, if you need help out there, we'd love to talk to you.
Yeah, it might be one way to kind of outsource some things and not have to worry about them in the practice, and kind of hand it off to the experts.
Yeah. So. Payment posting, that's something that always bothers people. They can't get their payments posted, and then once you don't get your payments posted, then you can't send out patient statements. And so all of this, it has a ripple effect. So
that's revenue is super important right now, especially in our practices. And I want to thank you so much for joining us today and giving us some information and some expert advice. And if people have questions, they have your email. And if people like this, I'm happy to do more on billing and coding and things like that to help ODs take their practice to the next level. So thank you so much, Shane, for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was an honor and a pleasure. So y'all take care.
Bye, everybody.